Hello. Thank you for joining us on another session at Thinkly MSME Accelerate by Charudatta. In this conversation, we are going to discuss something which is even more discomforting for the MSMEs. And this particular thing is called building your brand, or even to be very specific, managing the public relationship. Normally, MSME owners are of the view that मेरा तो काम बोलेगा, मैं ऐसा काम करूंगा कि लोग मेरे पास आएंगे और मेरे से काम लेकर जाएंगे एंड दे विल कम एंड वर्क just only for me. They will I'll create a quality of work that somebody will not be able to copy at any point in time in their life. They will just come searching for me and then start working. It doesn't happen that way. Things happen in a very different way, and there is always a need for you to be available or at least visible for clients to see you and recognize you. So how do you do that? People who are mostly largely introvert, people who are extremely good at what they do on technical side, but restrict themselves even for creating the basic image and basic reach to their own client base, or even people just around their client base. It's very difficult for them to accept the concept that we need to make a specific reach out, and that too, if you go and ask them to make an investment in that particular reach out, there are people who would shy away from that by default. So for you to understand why it's important for you to start in that journey early and start in the right direction, what are the right steps for you? Why do you need to start? When do you need to start? How do you need to start? We have an industry veteran joining us today. Vipul, thank you so much for taking out time and joining us today.
Thank you, Charu, for inviting me today.
Before we start and get into the topic itself, I would like to understand first about what has been your professional journey so far.
Okay, so Charu, my name is Vipul Bondal. My company name is Verite Consulting. Verite means the truth in French. The reason I chose this name for my company is because, I always believe that communication and brand building as such should be based on the truth. And, therefore the company name also I have chosen. I have now about 30 years of experience in this industry. Come January 1st, I will actually complete 30 years in this industry. I think my gray hair is a testament of that. Having said that, brand building is a evolving exercise. You're as good as the last 1 year. What you've done in the last 1 year is more relevant than what you've done in previous years. So I believe I'm a 1 year old in this exercise as well, in that sense. Uh, I've consulted a whole host of companies in my professional journey at a time when most companies did not know some of the known brands of today. I have had the privilege of having to work with them. Few names would be Kellogg's, would be Intel, would be Cisco. These were all new in India about 30 years ago. And I've had the opportunity of working closely with these brands, and can say that I was part of their success journey in India in the last 30 odd years. And I bring that kind of experience to the table when I help my customers, which are today largely startup companies and SME companies, as you call MSME companies.
People, let me start with a very fundamental question. Why companies should engage in this?
Well, as you rightly said at the start of the discussion, you said that most people believe that what you do will be seen, and people will reach out to you. Well, in today's hyper media world, as such, everybody is on social media. Even the channel that we are speaking on is a social media channel. Attention is very, very limited. And it is very necessary to draw attention. And trust is even more limited than attention. So it is important that you not only draw attention, but also be a trusted company or brand, whatever you may want to call it. And in that, it is important, therefore, to build your brand and your reputation in such a way that people come and look for you. There's a very old song in Hindi. They said, "Jungle mein mor nacha, kisi ne na dekha." The reason it is because, if you do some activity in some corner of the world, if you don't make efforts to portray that to the world, it is similar to that. So this is a process which is similar to that. So our endeavor is to make sure that the world sees that nachne wala movie.
Absolutely. And how can this happen?
Yeah, so there are various ways it can happen. So, brand building, as we call it, quote unquote, is a process of doing that, of, making sure that what you do gets known, and in the process you get trusted. So there are various ways of doing it. You could advertise, you could engage in a PR activity, you could, build a social media presence for yourself, you could organize and be part of events and exhibitions, you could be on social media channels like yours and give opinions. You could, there are you could sponsor IPL, for example. you know so there are various ways of doing that. It all depends on your company, your brand, uh, your business that you are engaged to, who are the customers that you want to attract, and so on. So it's not a one size that fits everybody. It has to be as per your company, your industry, and your customers.
And when you should start?
Well, what I say is, to my clients is, if you haven't started 20 years back, you should have actually started 20 years back. But if you haven't, start today. So there's never a good time to start. It's always a good time to start. So there's no fixed time when you should be beginning. If you haven't yet started, start right away. Invest a little money to build your brand, and it'll help you in the long run.
Certainly. Alicia has a very specific question here. What's your top advice for MSMEs just starting with their branding journey to ensure that they create a solid foundation?
Yeah. So, the basic, of course, it will come across as a very basic answer, but most companies should have a very, very good and engaging website. I think that should be the first and most important thing, because the minute you talk about yourself, people would like to see your website. The alternative to a website could be a LinkedIn page or a Facebook presence. That is the very, very basic thing that you ought to have. Uh, Secondly, the information ought to be updated, cannot be a dated website. If you have news and media reports about yourself on the website, make sure it is not older than 6 months. Uh, you know, that is also important, because then you will be seen as a company which is constantly doing something.
Yes,
Imagine yourself going onto a website and finding out that the last you were written about was 5 years ago. It's not exactly communicating the right thing. So, if you're in that kind of, if you have those pages, make sure they're updated. That's all. uh, your business may not change for a long time, in which case make sure that the website reflects that kind of uh, a personality about yourself.
sure. Lavanya wants to understand, for someone new to brand building, what fundamental principles or advice would you offer based on your extensive experience?
Okay, so the most fundamental advice I will say is, be authentic. Don't try to portray what you're not. uh, if you are a company which is in a particular business and a particular industry, make sure you are seen as the best in that. Don't try to overreach, don't try to do things you aren't. uh, and most importantly, whatever claims you make in the public domain, make sure they are backed by good evidence, they're backed by a good track record. In essence, basically, you are an authentic organization, and authenticity will go a long way in building your brand. No matter how small or large is your outreach, make sure it is authentic.
Very important. Varun wants to understand, what strategies can MSME employ to differentiate themselves from competitors and be memorable?
Okay, so this is again, like I said at the start of this discussion, there's no one size that fits everybody. Each one has a differentiator for their own product or their brand, make sure that particular differentiator is is highlighted in whatever you do. If quality is something that differentiates you from competition, make sure you focus on quality. If customer service is your strength, then focus on customer service. Whatever is the differentiator. So it doesn't change only because you are doing additional brand building. It remains the same. The intent is to pass on your differentiator.
Okay. Gayatri is building upon this particular part. She wants to understand how important is customer feedback in shaping brand image of MSMEs and how it can be actively collected.
Well, customer feedback is something that actively keeps building brands. Uh, Customer feedback is very, very important. You ought to take customer feedback into consideration when you're building your uh, brand strategy, brand communication strategy, and also keep, you know, fine tuning it depending on the feedback. However, making sure that it doesn't change from the fundamentals or the authenticity of the brand. I'll give you a small
Agree.
example. I'll give you a small
Yeah,
example to
please.
prove what I'm saying. So, you may have seen the campaign that Bill Gates has done on, on doing good in the world. Through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, there's a lot of good that is being done in the world, and that somewhere or the other helps the Microsoft brand. Do you know when this whole process started? This whole process started actually in the mid 90s, when for the first time Mr. Gates was put on the cover. I think it was Time magazine put him on the cover, or saying that he's the richest man in the world. That time there was not much of social media. Social media was not there, but letters to the editor was a very important feedback. And the next edition of that particular magazine was full of you know criticism of, he may be the greatest man in the world, but what has he done? How does it help us? It was not criticism as such, but a lot of feedback which said that, he may be the greatest man, he may have achieved a lot, but the world didn't see him that way. And that is when that whole process of doing good, philanthropy, social responsibility was brought out and was highlighted. And today the world knows him not only as one of the richest people in the world, but also one of those who contributes the most to philanthropy and doing good.
Agree. Anand is building upon a very similar part.
Sure.
In the evolving landscape of communication, how do you stay ahead to ensure that your brand building strategies remain relevant?
Okay, so like I said, two, three things have to be consistent. Your What you promise to your customer as a brand, that remains consistent. Two, authenticity remains consistent. So these two things remain consistent in your brand communication, whether you're a starter in the whole brand building process or you've been around for a long time. So that is one. What needs to change, of course, is your tactical approach. Tactics can keep changing depending on what mediums you use, depending on what is the current need of your customer in terms of understanding you or reaching out to you. That can keep changing. So you can be ahead of the time, or you can be with the time. uh, Depending on what medium you want to use, you can keep making changes to your strategy. I mean, your tactics. Your strategy will more or less remain the same.
Fair. Lakshmi Rajan wants to understand, can you share a memorable success story from your career wherein effective brand building played a pivotal role?
Okay, so there are several, but I'll tell you one which is very, very close to my heart. Charu, I've spoken about this to you many times in the
Yes.
past. This is not so much about brand building, but as much as about identity building. So I won't take names here for very, very obvious reasons, but there was a particular developer in Mumbai who had sold flats to a whole host of people. And those people, for reasons internal to the entire process of handing over those apartments actually did not get a chance to get their flats. They were aggrieved customers, and no matter how much they tried, they were not able to get through uh, to the developer, and therefore were not able to procure the flats. What we did for them was something very, very different. We did an entire brand building come reach out exercise, and got all of them together, because if in when you purchase an apartment, you are a single purchaser, whereas there are hundreds of such customers. So we got all of them together. We built an identity for themselves as owners of those flats, and created an identity for them, virtual identity, real identity. And with this approach, we actually reached out to the press, we reached out to other stakeholders like politicians, government officials, and so on. uh, we even managed to influence the legal process a little bit, because there was a court case which was going on, a related court case. And in that process, the judiciary actually understood some of the troubles that these people were going through, and passed an order which speeded up the process. And as we speak, Charu, I'm happy to inform you that many of the flat owners are receiving the keys to their house, something that they were waiting for the last 6 7 years. And it was a really heartbreaking, I mean, a heartwarming moment for me a year later, whereas almost a year ago, they had almost given up on ever seeing their house. So in a year we've been managed to make that change. So it's a different approach, Charu, to be very honest with you. We do a lot of things professionally, but when you do something that helps give people their livelihoods back, it makes a lot of difference.
I completely agree. Now, Sham has a question which is very relevant to what we discussed now. How can storytelling be leveraged by MSMEs to build an emotional connect with their audience?
Fabulous question. So there was a time when you know we couldn't do storytelling. You either put out an advertisement that somebody saw, which was clearly one sided. The brand was communicating with the audience, or you saw some factual stuff that was happening through the PR process in the old way, some news about you and so on, but there was no interaction with the consumer, which was a two-way process. Social media has totally enabled this.
Yes.
YouTube and mediums like there, where people interact with brands, have enabled this. People put out you know things about, let's say somebody owns a car, so they'll put out a story about a car. It's not been done by the company, it goes on to the company Facebook page or something like that, where they actually talk about their journey with that brand. So these are all stories. I mean, what the company did historically is one part of the story. What the consumers experience with their product or the brand is another part of the story. And somewhere in between all of this, when all of this comes together, a story which is real, even more real than what the company is putting out, actually comes out. So that is the entire storytelling process.
Now, Swati's question is very relevant to this point.
Okay.
She said that, "Hi Vipul, it's great to talk to someone with such a great experience. I want to ask from your early career, what is a piece of advice that still guides you, still guides your PR and branding approach today?"
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question if you don't
So
mind?
Swati wants to understand
Yeah.
which is one particular instance or an experience from early part of your career that
Yeah.
continues to guide your approach today.
Well, several, but I think the most important one is to be authentic, personally, and also advise my customers and clients to be, authentic to their stakeholders. Authenticity, I think, is the most important thing in any relationship, especially between a brand and its customers. So at any point in time, whenever my clients want to put out something or I want to put out something about myself, I always make sure I put it through a test whereby I ensure that it is authentic. I ask a lot of questions to my customers, almost to the point of irritating them, to find out whether what they are putting out is the fact or not. Once that is out, then you can be 100% sure that what you're saying is authentic. And when you say something or do something in a very authentic way, people have a way of you know understanding that you're doing it in an authentic way, and it'll go through.
Sure. Siddhi has a question. Considering the current digital age, how
Yeah.
do you balance traditional PR methods with modern online strategies for effective brand building?
Okay. So, Charu, the principle of doing PR hasn't changed. The principle always was, you need to uh, say what you have to say in you know with a lot of detail. Any claim that you make has to be backed by facts and figures, has to be backed by information. So that is one. Two, timing is very important. Earlier we used to have 24 hours to put out something. Now the timing has reduced to a few hours at best. If you're lucky, you have a few hours to respond to something. The speed of doing things has changed, no doubt, but the principle remains the same. The principle is that whatever you put out, make sure one, it is authentic. Two, make sure that you are backing it with facts and figures, and making sure that you have the customer's interest in mind. So what I want to say here is that the basics haven't changed, only the way of doing things have changed.
Now, this is, I will also bring in the second question from Shruti here first.
All
So,
right.
in your opinion, how has technology influenced the brand building, and what trends do you foresee in shaping the future of PR?
Okay. So basically, technology has only speeded up the process. Like I said earlier, you used to have 24 hours to do something. Today, you have less than 2 hours to do it. So, so only technology has speeded up. I don't think it has changed the fundamentals too much, except the speed in which you have to respond to a situation. However, one thing that you need to do, and that will determine the trend going forward, is you need to be very proactive. You need to think what the customer needs. So this is an ongoing process. As the marketing or as the communications lead on companies, you ought to be proactive in understanding or anticipating what the customer wants to know and being ready, often telling the message even before the customer wants to hear it. So even as the customer is getting there, you are already there with your message, and that happens with time. I mean, it's not something that will happen overnight if you've not done it so far, but it is easily achievable.
Nisha wants to understand, beside logos and colors,
Yeah.
what is the underrated element according to you that can make or break a brand's connection with its audience?
Apart from logos and colors, you mean?
Colors, yes.
Well, the most important part of the brand is the brand message. What does the brand stand for? Colors and logos are the visible aspect of it, and there are a lot of aspects of a brand which are not visible, which are often not said, and that is also very critical. You have to be very consistent in the message that comes out about your brand. At least the message that comes out from the owner of the brand has to be very, very consistent. It cannot keep changing every now and then. Uh, or if there are a set of messages, then it is a set of messages that you need to give. So it's all part of strategy. What is the message that you want to give? However, consistency is very important. If a brand represents, let's say, three characteristics, then making sure that all three characteristics are brought out, or at one time one character. But you can't have 20 characteristics, for example. You can't be diffused, you can't be confused as a brand. So that is very important. Making sure that one or two or three clear messages are put out by the brand is very critical.
Rajesh Mishra wants to understand, can you highlight the significance of networking and relationships in PR industry and how it contributes to brand success?
Sure. So, networking and relationship have always been there. In fact, PR, the word itself is public relations. You know, this is one profession in the communications gamut where it is all about, it was and is continues to be all about relationship building, whether it is with your audiences, whether it is with the press, whether it is with the general public, whether it is with, let's say, government, for example, or
Yes.
whether it is with regulators today, uh, whether it is with, you know, netizens or internet citizens, as we call them, whoever it is, building those relationships on an ongoing consistent basis is very, very important. It was always important, and in today's world of, let's say, highly connected world, it is even more important to build those relationships. I can't emphasize less about the value of networking in today's world, and one has to keep on doing it. One has to keep on improving it if there is a requirement to improve it, and one has to be very, very consistent at it.
Farmir wants to understand how can someone who is just starting out can navigate through the complexities of PR industry.
Well, actually speaking, it's not that complex. It is actually very simple. The simplicity comes because one, there is a very clear, so there's a brand. Okay, let me make it a little simpler rather than complicated. There's a brand, okay, which wants to be seen in a particular way, has a particular message that it wants to give out. That doesn't change. This is common. What one can do and improve on is, how do you want to put this message out? So one can be creative there. Activities and ideas can be very, very creative. You can, if you are starting and you want to highlight these things, you can give your client certain new ideas which they can use to talk about their brand, uh, and you can suggest some innovative mediums for them to reach out. uh, all brands, as far as I know, most brands would be happy to try out something new if it helps them. uh, you know if you are confident that the brand will be okay with that idea, and it'll benefit, they will see some they will see some benefit in doing that and put some little money behind it. And if not, then there are people like Charu who can help you with telling the customer why they should go in for a particular medium or not.
So this is the point which is very critical, Vipul, which creates a differentiation between the MSME which wants to grow and the people who are getting stuck at this point in time. My
I think,
request.
Charu, one point which MSMEs need to think about is, none of the big brands which we know today ever became big by not communicating or by not talking about themselves. Uh,
Yes.
and even more so because, let's remember one thing: if we don't speak about ourselves, then there is someone else who is talking about us. And therefore, you know there are two things that can happen. Either you may have a bad reputation because somebody else is doing your talking, or you may have no reputation because nobody is talking about you, including you. So both these situations are not ideal. However, what can happen is, if you talk about yourself, if you get your people to talk, sometimes people, most companies don't even realize this, that their own people, their own staff are good brand ambassadors. If they put out nice things about their company or the place they work, that itself can go a long way in building a good brand for the company. It need not be very, very expensive advertising. It need not be very, very expensive social media exercises. It can be simple small things that uh, you know companies do in house. Let's say some innovation that they've done which is helping their customer, or a success story about a customer. They can definitely talk about it. Take the customer's permission, no doubt, because the customer would like to be aware that something is getting put out. By all means, put it out. It'll talk about your company.
How can people start? What is the basic step for them to start?
Okay, so basic step for them to start is to figure out what they mean for themselves. What is it that they as a company, they as a brand mean to their customer? If not, if they don't know, a good point would be to ask their customer, why is it that my customers give me business? What is the reason that they are with me today, despite everything? So that could be a good indicator of the brand that you are. For example, they might think, you're a very dynamic personality and therefore they should be with you. Or they may think you're a creative person and therefore, so, depending on what the customer sees you could be the reason for them to like you as a brand, and then build on it. So that could be the starting point and then build on it. There could be a way you want to be seen as well. So see how you can incorporate that into the brand personality as such, and therefore then build on. A starting point will always be the customer.
Awesome. Now, can you help me understand the same point with some examples on how people have started, where have they reached? I think a lot of people are asking questions about examples and
Okay.
how they can see somebody has achieved it.
Okay. So fine. So let's say let's start with some popular brands. Okay.
Okay.
So when we go to do a photocopy, for example, today.
Yeah.
So what do we say? Ek Xerox man.
Yes.
So the brand Xerox is now become synonymous with the with with the
Photocopy.
with
Yeah.
the with the process. I mean,
Yes.
or a lot of people go and say, "मुझे एक Aquafina की बिस्लेरी देना." So Bisleri has become, synonymous with bottled water. So that
Yes.
is the highest point of how someone can, be seen, and that is the way one should aspire to be, because eventually that will mean that. And trust me, I don't think none of these companies ever probably wanted to go there. You know, I don't think Bisleri ever thought that they will stand for the category. So but that's where they've reached. The reason they've reached there is because they pioneered. They did a lot of things. In India, as you know, nobody, giving water free of cost is part of our ethos, right? When
Yes.
somebody comes home, we offer them water. Somebody comes to our office, we offer them water, right? Even today we do that. Even though we offer them a bottle of Bisleri, we'll still not charge them for it. But so let's see how we've built that into our way of doing things. And that's how, it is seen in the way we do things. This is seen in the process of marketing, is seen in the process of everything that a brand like Bisleri will ever tell you. Is this whole process of quenching the thirst at the right time, being there where people need you. These are the basic things that Bisleri does. You take any example. I mean, if I have to talk about a brand which I have built, is a brand which is in the business of credit information. There was a time when nobody knew that credit information being is being sought when you take a loan, for example. It was for a long time it was an internal process to a bank. So if you applied for a loan or a credit card, your credit score would be seen, and they would decide whether they want to give you a loan or not. Uh, l- it's only after the banks actually started talking about your CIBIL score is when you got to know. And do you know that CIBIL is a company?
Yes.
CIBIL is not a neutral. Uh, I mean, it's a company which puts out the CIBIL score. There are three other competitors of CIBIL as we speak, but everybody talks only about CIBIL score. So CIBIL's again, a CIBIL score has become you can say a representative of your credit score.
Absolutely.
So CIBIL did a lot of work to build credibility for uh, you know credit information as such. At a time when nobody knew what credit information was all about, it took a lot of time to educate uh, customers on, including people in banks. Many people in banks also did not know what credit score was all about, how credit score can be compiled, There was a time when nobody even knew the word algorithm. So how the CIBIL score is arrived at is done using an algorithm. Nobody has control on, if nobody has a control. Not even people within CIBIL have a way to control your credit score. Your credit score completely depends on the information that is given by the bank. It was important to build credibility for the CIBIL score. And we did that over a period of about 2 to 3 years, where we had to build the credibility for the CIBIL score so that it becomes acceptable. And today,
Great.
before applying for a loan or a credit card, people check their credit score. They know that, okay, I need a better credit score, and they take steps to improve their credit score over a period of time, and then apply for a loan or a credit card. We used to joke at that time that कल को किसी को शादी भी करनी हो ना तो वो सिबिल स्कोर देख के शादी करेगा. So that to make sure that they're getting into the right kind of an alliance. Of course, that was a joke, but talking about how uh, a credit score will be a useful indicator of the credibility of a person, which is something that you know it will become in times to come.
Before this point in time, I want to discuss a very specific thing over here. Now,
Yeah,
particularly in case of MSMEs,
yeah,
rather than reaching out to a very larger audience, people are a lot more comfortable working with the peer groups
sure.
within those particular part, maybe small group, maybe more of a industrial associations wherever they are part of it. And largely a circle gets limited only to that particular point,
Yeah,
right? And the practices, the experiences that are shared amongst individuals when they're in the meeting and all tend to create a specific impression. And based on that particular impression, a lot of companies then tend to plan their strategy or work on this particular part. So when in this kind of a situation wherein the exposure itself or the conversation around that particular topic are very, very limited for a particular MSME owner himself or herself,
yeah.
what is the best way for them to see the larger picture, and what would basically trigger them to start getting into a journey of building a brand, creating that trust, and being authentic, as you very rightly put it?
Right. So there are lots of brands which are very, very industry specific. For
Yes.
example, in the medical profession, there are a lot of brands which are big when you interact with the medical profession, but outside of those, you don't know, the general public doesn't know too much about it,
Agree.
unless it's a product which is being consumed by, let's say, by the patient, right? Or most people don't know, but within the community of the medical professionals, it's a very, very big brand. It means a lot to the people. So there are industry associations, there are industry journals, there are industry magazines which are consumed by people belonging to that industry. So this is true for medical profession, this is true for various small industrial groups also. There are lots of magazines and publications which are consumed by people in plastics industry, for example. There are lots of magazines and publications in fashion, for example, fashion industry. I'm not talking about the uh, consumer face of fashion. So there are lots of those things. There are buildings and architectural industry, for example. There are a lot of brands which are consumed only by them. So there are magazines which are there. They want to, because their reason their reason for being is to help the industry. So they will be willing to write about the. It might not even be relevant, for example, to be seen in a Times of India. It might be more important to be seen in those magazines,
True.
and therefore focus on those magazines, focus on those events, activities, exhibitions related to those activities. Utilize your budgets to be seen there rather than being seen publicly. It's not required perhaps for your industry to be seen publicly.
Agree. So on this very important note, wherein Vipul is guiding us on two parts. First, being authentic, get your best version out, get your best image out, be what you are, and be seen the way you are. And also, very importantly, assessing what is the right method for you to pursue a particular strategy. how you can reach out, what should be your right build, what is your customer, how you should reach out to them. Based on all these parameters is what would eventually lead to your own PR strategy and your own brand getting created over a period of time. People, let me take this opportunity to thank you so much for these amazing insights for
Thank you.
our
Thank you.
all our
Thanks for the
listeners.
opportunity.
Vipul is very much connected there. Vipul is also copied in the LinkedIn post that you have done. Any kind of queries that you have, you would like to reach out and get any inputs from him, please feel free to reach out. And I can assure you on his behalf, you would get the most authentic advice.
Thank you. And wish you all the best, Charu and Thinkly, for future endeavors. And it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much, Vipul. Thank you everyone for this time. Feel free to reach out to Vipul for all your queries regarding the public relationship and brand building. And we'll keep on coming to you with topics that we are not very comfortable discussing, but eventually all of us know that this is something that we need to do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.